like those people left. I don't know how YouTubers are able to just like go out and vlog in public and like walk around with a camera pointing at them when people are like walking by and staring at them. It's so weird. Definitely not used to it. I just went on a walking tour of the Mount Hope Cemetery. It's a cemetery that's just a little bit south of downtown Rochester. It's the first Victorian municipal cemetery in the country, which means that since it was municipal and city-owned, it was open to anybody who wanted to be buried here. The earliest burial here is from 1837, and right now there are about 352,000 people buried in the cemetery. It's still an active cemetery. Most new burials happen at the south end, and I did a walking tour for the north end today. But they bury about 400 to 500 people here a year. The land that the cemetery is built on is really hilly, which is strange because most of Rochester is really flat, and the surrounding area is really flat until you get south around the Finger Lakes, where there's a lot of valleys with little lakes in between them.
Hi, I'm back. It started raining at the cemetery, so I had to come back home to film the rest of this. So, where I left off. Where did I leave off? So Mount Hope Cemetery is actually built on an Escher. It's basically a big pile of rock and debris and silt that was moved by a glacier. About 12,000 years ago, there was a large glacier about 2 miles high, moving southward from Canada down to Rochester in the New York area. So this glacier actually deposited all this silt and rocks and dirt, and that's where the cemetery is built today. The plus side of this is there's no clay in this soil that was deposited from the glacier, so it makes it really easy to dig there. On the negative side, because Rochester has really cold winters and it snows a lot, back in the 1800s when we didn't have any heavy equipment, you would just have to have grave diggers digging the graves by hand with shovels. Back then during the winter, it was really difficult to dig graves, so they actually had basically a storehouse for bodies, and there was on our tour, the tour guide pointed out that there's this obelisk, which you would see a lot of in this Victorian period for wealthy people's grave markers. But this obelisk had holes at the top, and that was because it was placed on top of the storage area for these bodies. And as the gases would vent, they would have to go out somewhere before these bodies could be buried when the ground thawed enough for them to do so. You also see around the cemetery, because of this glaciated terrain, you'll see kettle ponds, which are really cool, very round lakes that were formed thousands of years ago when this glacier was there by big chunks of ice being deposited on the ground, and as they would melt, they would leave this big round hole in the ground. You can actually find kettle pots all over the place, all over Alaska, Canada, anywhere that had previously been glaciated. Even in Cape Cod they have them. So actually one of the more recent burials of a well-known person in Mount Hope Cemetery was Malcolm Glasser. He was buried there when he died in 2014, and actually there's a huge stone monument built to him. It weighs 900,000 pounds and it's built of Vermont granite. He was the CEO of First Allied Corporation. It's a holding company that actually owns the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Manchester United. Some of the other famous people who are buried at the cemetery include Susan B. Anthony. She was a major player in the American suffragette movement, the movement to earn women the right to vote in this country. She's buried with a modest headstone in her family plot, and on election day, it's a tradition in Rochester for women, and really anybody, but mostly women go down, and they'll put their little I voted sticker on the headstone. During the election last year, women lined up for hours to put their sticker on Susan B. Anthony's gravestone just to say thank you to her. I'll post a link down below to a local news article explaining the tradition. Another really well-known figure who is buried at Mount Hope Cemetery is Frederick Douglass. He was an abolitionist, a writer. He made so many contributions to society, and probably one of the most influential African-American people of the 19th century. Another local celebrity who's buried here is Hiram Sibley. He actually was sort of a telegraph tycoon. He integrated a whole bunch of really small companies all around the country into one big company, which we now know as Western Union. This company actually had a weird story. So he was trying to get a telegraph line built across the Bering Strait and was negotiating with Russia. And before the negotiations were over, the transatlantic cable was laid, so it became obsolete. But since the Tsar Nicholas of Russia had been already talking to him, he said, hey, do you know maybe if the US government would be interested in buying Alaska? So he brought it to the US government, the proposal, and that's how we ended up with Alaska, apparently. So during the 1800s, Mount Hope Cemetery functioned as a city park for the people of the Rochester and the surrounding area. Because of this, they planted lots of trees intermixed among the grave sites. And so it was a really nice, peaceful place to walk around and just go and enjoy yourself. Because so many trees have been dying out in recent years, the Friends of Mount Hope Cemetery, which is the organization that actually puts on the walking tours that I went on today, they're raising money to try to replant the area. They want to bring in new trees and, remove some of the dead and dying ones that aren't going to last much longer. They have a goal of raising $50,000 toward this goal of being able to replant the cemetery. So if you're willing and able, I'll leave a link in the description box so that you can make a donation. We saw a really beautiful old purple beech tree in the cemetery today, and it's actually suffering from a disease called bleeding canker. This disease is essentially an infection in the tree that will most likely kill it. The cemetery has actually spent thousands of dollars injecting the tree with antibiotics to try to cure it, but you can still see visible marks from the disease. It's pretty incredible to think that when this tree was planted, it was less than 5 feet tall. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, go ahead and subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos like this. It really helps me out. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!